ja meie järgmine esineja on valmis. Ta kõneleb meile ka ÜRO projektist, metoodikast ja Gundula Prokop on Austria Energiaagentuuri projektijuht. Bitte sehr.
Thank you very much. I hope you had enough coffee and are fresh enough for the last presentation. I want to thank the hosts of this conference for inviting me to this very diverse and interesting conference, and I've already learned a lot. My name is Gundula Prokop. I'm from the Austrian Environment Agency. You have heard from previous presentations from Domenica Carriera and Gulnara Roll about the UN project on smart city development in transition countries and development countries. And I will present now one small aspect, in fact, the starting point of this project. And you are lucky because a lot of information has already been presented, so I can move a bit quicker than anticipated. So, the objective, for example, was also already mentioned. What is the key objective of this project? In my opinion, it's the knowledge transfer from cities that are in more developed countries that have already a history with smart urban development to cities in transition and developing countries. And another key issue is the capacity building to strengthen urban administrations in this new area. And in the center of this project is the sustainable development issue and the human being as such and quality of life. And I think that is very important, that we are not only talking about energy efficiency, but about the whole package of a city, of the citizens living there, of the environment, the society, and the economy. All these three have to be in the right balance. Can already switch to the next one. I will introduce you to the first step. Sorry, I have a chaos with my notes, but I have it all sorted out. Okay. You have already been presented with some information. The pilot project will go in its implementation phase next year. A set of urban indicators will be tested in pilot cities. And why are these indicators important? They are not the most important part of the project, but they are very important for the starting phase. They are important to find a common language between cities from different cultures, from different development stages, and they will also be very important as an accompanying tool during the project. But the project as such will not stop with indicators and monitoring. That is only a tool to help implementation measures that should later on be implemented. The starting point is a project called Smart City Profiles that was developed by my organization. Specifically hand-tailored for Austrian cities and with a specific focus on energy efficiency, smart transport systems, and so on. And this project was extremely successful in Austria. It was applied in many cities, and it's still the system is still continued in its use. However, this is of course an Austrian concept, and it's not perfect for the global use. So this was our starting point, and we adopted it for the more generic global approach. In the first step, I won't go through this list. we did profound, comprehensive research of all the type of urban indicators that are available, of databases that are available, maps, and so on. And what also interested us was the question, are there other methods, despite normal statistics, urban statistics, to get information from a city? And in fact, we found a lot of other methods like expert interviews, doing perception surveys, checklists, and so on. So our conclusions were that in the literature and from what is available, there are a lot of data gaps. There are a lot of wonderful indicators, but you cannot calculate them because the cities don't have the data to carry them out, and that there are a lot of neglected issues. In particular, resilience towards climate change is usually neglected, citizens' participation, and robustness. In particular, robustness towards economic crisis and also incidents of natural hazards. And in our understanding, a sustainable city needs to be very robust, and vulnerability should be as small as possible. So, but I don't want to talk so much about the theory. Let's look at our approach, which is a proposal which we want to test with pilot cities next year. What I also want to mention is there is no, excuse my drawing, this is supposed to be an elephant and a mouse looking at the shop window. I think the mouse is not very visible. But there is no such concept as a one-size-fits-all, that an indicator set that would be fine for a small city in a developing country, but would also suit a big developed city in the European Union. So we need a sort of flexibility to meet the different demands. And in our first approach, we developed two sets of indicators, one more or less basic set for cities in developing and transition countries, where issues like literacy rate, infant mortality, slums, and so on are an issue, and another set for more developed cities, probably more suitable for the European Union and North America. Well, we paid a lot of respect to data availability, so do only what is feasible and where we have references, and we try to look only at issues where we can later on also provide solutions. So I think we can jump. This one, we have identified 10 development fields, and for each development field, subtopics and indicators. And this is our general structure. You all know the three columns of sustainability, which are economy, environment, and society. The key development fields we identified were economic development and production and consumption. And in the middle column, air, climate change, natural hazards, land biodiversity, fresh water and oceans. Oceans, of course, only an issue for cities that are situated at coasts. And then society. Social issues include, above all, poverty issues, governance, health, education, and demography. So this is our indicator structure. You see the three columns, the development fields, and also the subtopics. And I don't want you to read it in detail, but just to give you an idea, the bold ones are the ones that we think are very important. Okay, let's look at the development fields and give you a brief idea what our concept is and what we think are the key subtopics that should be addressed. And you find some subtopics that are underlined and some in italics. That means they are supposed to meet different demands. First of all, the economic performance of a city. Employment is important for any city. Housing, energy efficient buildings. That is, of course, a subtopic where you can only, that is usually only an issue in higher developed cities. In cities where most of the people live in slums, energy efficiency is disregarded and considered as a minor issue. Public expenditures, that the balance of public expenditures, what goes to human health, how much money goes to education, and how much money goes to research and development, are clear indicators how much a city is investing in their future development. Tourism is also usually an issue that addresses more or less developed cities. With regard to consumption and production, transport is a topic that concerns any city, whether it's Dubai, London, or a city in a developing country. Of course, also energy, but in a more developed country or a more developed city, the share of renewable energies can be documented and also measured. Waste is also, for any city, a big issue. But in a more basic environment, a regular waste collection is already a success. And in more developed cities, you can measure the waste per capita and try to reduce it. With regard to e-communication, you would also try to ask different or get information on different indicators. In some countries, access to internet for everybody is already a big achievement. And in more developed cities, it's the broadband penetration. Air, climate change, greenhouse gases, that is a global topic, addresses any city, in particular the greenhouse gases and the air quality. With regard to respiratory diseases, you will also only get information from higher developed cities. And what is extremely important from our point of view is the robustness towards natural hazards. It's unfortunately usually the case that the richer a city, the robuster is the city usually towards natural hazards. That has, of course, to do with the quality of building structures and the general infrastructure. And that was too quick. Land and biodiversity, in particular in fast-growing cities, soil sealing is an enormous problem. The more sealed soil you have, the more problems you have with heat island effects, and the more prone is a city to flooding incidents. So the share of sealed areas and green areas should, in theory, be in balance. Green areas have also to do with the quality of life. Access to natural areas is extremely important. And you also have the effect that if natural areas are disregarded, people tend, if they have the money, to move out of the city and create even more environmental impacts. Freshwater and oceans, of course, and fisheries, that would only address cities that are situated at coast. Water efficiency is extremely important, and you would think that cities in areas where water is scarce are very careful with their water, but that is not necessarily the case. You have, in particular in southern cities, very often enormous inefficiency with, if people can afford it, sprinklers, swimming pools, and so on. Then I want to move to the last one, which is society. So social issues would, in less developed cities, above all, include poverty issues like housing, key supplies, and sanitation. Those indicators are relatively not so important for the European Union, but for situations in Northern Africa or East Asia, that is an enormous issue. With regard to governance, it would be safety and crime rates. Very important and also quite easy to research is voters' participation. And another big issue is gender inclusion. That can usually be monitored via the number of women positions, for example, in the city government, and the cooperation with surrounding areas. Usually an issue for more developed cities. If a city communicates with the surrounding areas, if they have a common public transport network, that is an excellent thing. With regard to health, we have identified under 5 mortality for more basic situations, and from medical care, a lot of issues, among them hospital beds. And also for education, you need to ask different questions. In some cities, it would be the literacy rate, and in other countries, the share of academics with higher education. Now I want to give you a short impression what this assessment would look like. Our set of more or less 35 basic indicators would be presented on a scale of 1 to 10. And now probably most of you would ask, what is the average? We cannot define the global average. We have thought about building regional clusters that make sense. For example, the European Union could be a regional cluster, or North Africa could be a regional cluster, or former Soviet states. And the average has to be calculated from such a regional cluster. And that would be a sort of regional benchmark. We have also tested this concept in Austria, and that was also implemented in other indicator schemes. So it's probably quite the thing to do. So I want to give you an example. This is an example for the subtopic transport. What it would look like. For this subtopic, we have a lot of indicators available. And how do you find data for these indicators? On the one hand, there are global statistics. If you are lucky, you will find local data. Satellite data probably won't help. For some aspects, you can do surveys in the population, and for some aspects you can work with expert opinion. So in the real world, such a subtopic can be answered in different ways, and we assume if we move from city to city, we will have different sources to answer our questions. So I'm already coming to an end. No, that was too quick. Have I done wrong? This one, and I had this one. Yeah. So just to give you an idea where information would come from local statistics, from surveys, from satellite data, expert opinions, and checklists. This is an idea how satellite data can help. Satellite data are available on a global basis, and with satellite data you can answer questions related to soil sealing, green spaces, urban sprawl and sometimes also to historic development. For most large European cities, this is already possible. It's readily available. For other cities, smaller cities and cities beyond the European Union, they could be relatively easily calculated. So what are the next steps? So our concept will be implemented in a set of pilot cities that are volunteering to participate in this scheme. And we have different clusters of cities. Domenica already mentioned it. My list is a bit shorter because it's not so up to date. But we have a couple of cities in more or less transition countries that are willing to participate. We have a cluster of cities from very developed cities with a history of sustainable development that are supposed to help and provide their expertise. And we have a couple of very large cities. We will have roundtable discussions, find out who is responsible, how can we get access to data, and so on. Okay, I'm already coming to an end. What is this methodology supposed to, what is our added value from this exercise? The whole project is supposed to increase the quality of life in cities, not by using indicators, but the indicators are a sort of starting point. Key issue is to increase robustness and vulnerability in cities by implementing very simple and cost-effective solutions and the reduction of emissions and improvement of environmental standards. Thank you very much for your attention. Being the last speaker is always, after so many presentations, difficult to keep track. Thank you.
Sehr gut, vielen Dank.